Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here and welcome to this webinar, Tips on How to Submit a Successful Proposal at AIEC 2023. My name is Josephine Williams and I'm the Events and Partnerships Manager at AIEC at IDP. And on behalf of IAA and IDP, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. We're absolutely delighted to have colleagues from all around the world and all around Australia, so a very big welcome to all. And before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. And I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all are here today. Joining me for this session is Louise Gould, Program Chair for AIEC. Hello, Louise.
Hello, Joe. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
And also we have Shamala and Addy hosting and on the background and on chat as well, so that you'll see them on the chat on your screens. So we've got lots to get through today, but first just a few housekeeping and important announcements. So we'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please use the Q&A button on the bottom, usually on the bottom bar, navigation bar of your screen. Use the Q&A button, so please put your questions there. And also, if we can't get through all of the questions at the end of this webinar, we'll take them offline and then post them on the website, so you'll have access to that later this week. And also the recording of this video, for those of you who might have to leave early, or if you want to share with a colleague, the recording will be available from tomorrow on our website as well. So an email will go out to all registrants to let you know when that's up. I'd like to just also acknowledge that the program committee, some members of the program committee are also on this call today. They're not panelists, so if you are here with us, to introduce yourself in the chat. And you can find out more about the different committee members on our website. And a photo there is from our recent program planning day, which was a couple of weeks ago. And so there's a few members there. So wanted to acknowledge that. Now, if you want to hear more and get more news about AIEC and stay connected, we are on several different social media channels. So you can go to LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter and Instagram. We're not on Facebook, but you can also reach us via email. And just a reminder to use the hashtag AIEC 2023 if you are connecting with us via social media. Now, before I hand over to Louise to talk to us a little bit more about the theme for this year, I wanted to just acknowledge that the last couple of years have been a little bit disruptive, and we've had a virtual event, we've had a hybrid event. On the back of the very successful event in Gold Coast last year, we've decided that this year in Adelaide it will be primarily a face-to-face, physical, in-person event. Some sessions might be available on demand or live streamed. We have yet to make a full decision on that, so watch this space. But for all intents purposes, and for the call for proposals and for the program, all speakers will need to be in person at the conference to present, speak, or facilitate a session. So in this webinar today, we will cover the theme. First of all, Louise is going to kick us off with that. And then we'll also go through the review and selection criteria, which is what the program committee and the reviewers look at in order to decide whether a presentation or a session proposal will get through. We'll also talk a little bit about the key interest areas and what that means for you, and also the different session types, so the different formats for this year. And finally, we'll wrap it up with some tips about how to make your proposal stand out from the crowd and what to avoid. So there's a lot to cover. We're hoping that we'll cover it in the next half an hour, so that leaves us about 15-20 minutes for questions. We can always stay on for a little bit longer if needed, and if not, we'll take that offline. So I'm going to now hand over to Louise. Louise, do you want to tell us first about the theme for this year?
I will. Look, hi everybody and welcome again. We're really glad that so many of you have registered for this seminar and are interested in submitting a proposal for this year's conference. So this year's conference theme is International Education, Visionary and Transformative, which is at the very heart of what we all do and what we're passionate about. It also speaks to the City of Adelaide, which is our host city for 2023. Adelaide is a very progressive city and a progressive state. And we thought that linking those two ideas together made for a very interesting theme for this year's conference. So it's about innovation, it's about, foresight, it's about the future, it's about how we transform people's lives and the communities in which they live and the ways in which we interact with each other in an education context. So next slide, please, Jo. The program committee met recently, and we sort of brainstormed a whole lot of topics that we would really be keen to see proposals about for this year's conference. Now, what you see in front of you is not an exhaustive list. It's just some ideas, some of the key ideas that came out. There's a full list of suggested topics that we're interested in on the website. So may I please recommend you all go to the website, like really detailed information on the website. But you'll get an idea of the sort of things that we're looking for. And while COVID, is still, some sectors are really still sort of trying to recover from the impact of COVID, we're trying to look beyond that as well this year and look to the future. So next slide. So review and selection criteria. So my partners in crime are the program committee and the steering committee and other reviewers that we use for the proposals that come in. We have criteria that we apply, and everybody is across. And we thought by sharing this with you, it helps you to shape your proposal. So the next slide, please. The first one, and it's really important, is relevance to international education. Because one of the first things we do is go through every proposal. If it's not relevant to international education or speaks to international education, it's not even going to get a look in. So it has to be about international education or related to international education. Sorry, too many educations in there. We often get people putting in things around schooling, early childhood education. This is not a conference about education. It is about international education. So next slide, please. Another criteria, innovation and originality. Like it's crucial that the proposal stands out. It has to be innovative, it has to be original. We're not looking for things that people can find easily on the web or in other formats. It's got to be something that people are going to learn from, and that's bringing in new ideas, new information, new data, new insights. Next one. The applicability and solutions orientation is really important, because people are looking for things to help them do their job better. So papers around addressing a problem that a sector or an organisation has encountered, and the solutions that they've found to work through that problem are really important. So case studies and so on. Next one, please. The insightfulness. So again, it's going to draw out insights for people. What was learnt by whatever the paper is about. What does that mean for future policies, future ways of working, future ways of interacting? The quality of the research and the methodology is really essential. If your paper is research-based, we want to know that the research has been done or near completion, that the methodology is clear, that the data will be available and the data will be shared at the conference. And you need to indicate the size of the data set you had. Like just saying, we're going to research this particular topic isn't enough. We need a bit of detail in there so we know the quality of the proposal and the research that's being suggested. Next, please. The speaker's expertise is really important. So we need to know that the speakers have demonstrated expertise in the area in which they're going to speak. Proposals that sort of stand out to are speakers from outside the international education sector. Now, I know I said at the beginning that it has to be relevant to international education. That just means we've got something to learn from it. So the speaker does not actually have to be an expert in international education. The speaker might have insights for our delegates from outside of the industry that help us do our job better. Common reasons for rejection are speakers haven't been identified. People might say, oh, look, we're going to have 5 speakers. We've only got 2 at the moment. Don't know who the others are going to be. We'll get back to you. But another reason is also speakers might have been identified, but they haven't actually been invited or confirmed. So make sure that your speakers are all lined up and you know who they're going to be, and you know that they're willing to do the presentation. And you know this year that they're going to be willing to do it in person. Sorry, Joe, next one. Okay, the non-commercial policy is really important. It can't be a sales pitch. Sorry, if anything's clearly a sales pitch, it would normally be rejected. And we see through sales pitches. Sorry, that sounds terrible, but you get what I mean, I think. Next one. Okay, so just in summary, in terms of the review and selection criteria, generally, this is what we look at: the relevance to international education. It's got to be innovative. It's got to be original. It can't be just a rehash of stuff that we all know. It's got to be applicable, solutions-based, something practical for people to take away. It has to have some insights for our delegates, based on evidence, expert speakers, and no sales pitch. And can I say, these are the criteria. Now, sometimes we get really good proposals that still tick all of those things, and they don't get into the program. There are a limited number of spaces. So the other thing we have to find is a balance of topics, a balance of speakers. So keep that in mind as well. So next one, please, Jo.
Sorry, Louise, I will just say just also that we're covering this very quickly, but on the bottom of that slide there's a link that explains those 7 criteria a lot more in detail. So please head to the website.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice.
Go to the next slide. Just give me a second.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the key interest areas. Sometimes we call these conference tracks, program tracks, key interest areas, special areas, and so on. Josephine's going to pop up a slide for me that has got the key interest areas outlined. So the tracks or the streams or whatever term you're more familiar with. And again, there's a lot more information on each one of them on the website. We have tracks that are aligned to sectors. We also have those that are aligned with a particular area of expertise or an International Education Association of Australia, IAEA network. And then there are others who are sort of beyond both sector and particular networks. And they're the 3 at the bottom that you see: the business development and strategy, which are those high level ones, the employability, and the professional development track. So each key interest area will appeal to a particular audience, network, group of people who share common interests. And as I said, it can align to a specific education sector or to a speciality or to both. And some are more broader than that. These categorizations, I think, are fairly familiar to people already working in international education. But as I said, if you're not familiar with the wording, just have a look on the website and you'll get a bit more information. And the descriptions you'll find on the website are just intended as a guide. And sometimes topics do cross multiple areas. So maybe try and go for the one that is most aligned with your concept. Now, Jo, I'm going to ask you, why are these important for the call for proposals?
Well, Louise, thanks. I think you've already alerted people that it's not a catch-all and a lot of things cross over. So what we tend to do is use these categories as a first filter to ensure that we have a balanced program. So as you would know, we have a number of questions on the submission form. So when you submit your proposal, you'll have multiple questions. So the first question we're going to ask is your proposal specific to a sector? So whether it's English language or vet or schools, I think, and the other one is higher ed. And this is a mandatory question and you can only select one. Then we will also ask you, what is your key interest area? So what is the sort of the higher level one? And that's also a single choice and mandatory. So that's the tricky one, because sometimes it can apply to two. But then you'll get the opportunity to also answer a third question, which is multiple choice. So what other areas does your proposal topic cover? And so that allows you to go in and select other key interest areas. We also ask people to identify some keywords. And again, this is not so much to decide whether that session is important or not, but it's just so that we can identify proposals that are being submitted into different tracks on a similar topic. So a perfect example for that would be work integrated learning, which sometimes applies to teaching and learning, but also sometimes might be taken from the angle of the employers. So really, it's just so that we can compare apples with apples and make sure that they get reviewed by the same committee members on the same panel. And then finally, there's an open question, which is target audience. So who is your intended audience for your proposal? Just to give us an idea of, you know, what background or what level are you pitching it at? So it's really just an opportunity to give us a little bit more background. So there's no right or wrong questions. The reason we ask these questions is first and foremost to make sure that the right people are reviewing the proposal, and that gets allocated to different people depending on your choices. And I guess as we further the decision making and get into the final selection, to ensure that we have a balanced program. So I think from a submission form, if you're not sure, please read through those descriptions, as Louise said, and do your best. And then just know that that might change. If your proposal does get accepted, we might recategorize it into another category if need be. Louise, I'm going to hand back to you to tell us a little bit about the different formats this year. There's a few changes, I think.
Okay,
or
thank
not
you.
so many, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, there's a couple of changes. We've tweaked a few things just to try and you know, each year we look to improve on what we've done the year before. So for those of you who were at AIEC 2022 on the Gold Coast, you would have seen our 15-minute presentations. So these are single presentation, one person, no Q&A at the time. We've just tweaked them a little bit. Now we're calling them Inspire presentations, and they're 14 minutes long. And the reason that they're 14 minutes long is just to allow a 1-minute changeover for the next speaker, because that was a bit tricky last year. So the way they work is we have two podiums on the stage, two speaker podiums, or two lecterns, whatever you want to call them. Speaker one does 14-minute presentation, 1-minute changeover. Their mic gets turned off, mic two gets turned on, and that speaker does their presentation. There can be up to two presenters for them. No chairperson, we'll just have someone in the room from the committee making sure things run smoothly. If you want to, if the people want to speak to you afterwards, there's a speaker lounge where you can arrange to meet with them after the session. This year, we will also group the sessions together, perhaps by track or key interest area, possibly by an overarching theme. So like there might be multiple presentations on India, for example. I'm just grabbing something out of the air that we could group together. Or they might all be on transnational education, or they might all be on something that all links together in learning abroad, you know, innovations in learning abroad or something. So they're a reasonable spot though. 14 minutes is a pretty good speaking time with no Q&A. The other ones which haven't changed are the panel sessions, again, 60 minutes, up to 3 or 4 speakers, including the chair. That allows for about a 40-minute presentation in total, and then 10, 15 minutes of Q&A, preferably 15 minutes, because the audience really likes to be able to interact. You can put in for a single presentation, which is one person or 2 people presenting for 60 minutes. Those spots will have to be pretty dynamic, I'll say, in terms of hot topics. So make sure you familiarise yourself with the suggested topics. And then the cafe sessions, which are really interactive. I think many of you are familiar with that. It's set up like a restaurant, small round tables, sort of cabaret style. No real presentations, just someone to kick it off, people moving around from tables with 3 or 4 facilitators. And again, we've got 40 minutes of actual group discussions at the small tables, and then 10 minutes of reporting back by the groups. So again, website, sorry, I feel like we're just constantly saying, go to the website, go to the website. There's a lot of information describing how these sessions would work. But these are the 4 that you can actually, session types that you can select for your submission.
Thanks.
And now I think I'm handing back to Josephine.
Yeah, so there's a 5th format that is not really, you can't submit a proposal for this format because you actually don't have to. But we've now run brain dates for 3 years in a row. I think the first 2 years was virtual, and then last year we did it as a hybrid event. And this year we're going to incorporate brain dates again into the program, but only for in-person brain dates. And you can see there are some photos of the Brain Date Lounge in AIEC 2022. So there'll be more information coming out, but it's just something to remember that if a proposal can't get into the program because perhaps it doesn't apply or it's not as relevant to a broad number of people, there is still ample opportunity to have that conversation and to present on that topic through a brain date format, which are smaller groups of people meeting face to face and having a bit of a chat. So you can have one-on-one brain dates, you can have group brain dates. And really, it's a great opportunity to present a topic where you're asking for someone to help you solve a problem, or maybe you want to brainstorm an idea, perhaps you want to tell a story, you are an expert in a particular field and you want to share your knowledge, or you simply want to have an open discussion, or perhaps maybe even a bit of a friendly debate. So for these particular formats, you're not going to be able to submit a proposal for a brain date, but fear not, closer to the conference, we will open the brain date market and there'll be an app and you can just basically post your topics there. So more on that, but it will be in person only, and we will have it running for 4 days. So from the Tuesday in the afternoon and all the way to the Friday lunchtime. And again, for details, please go to the website. There's a little bit there, but we'll be adding a little bit more in the coming weeks and months. All right, Louise, I don't know if there's any questions, but I think I'm going to continue on and we'll do the questions at the very end.
Yeah, I think keep going. And there's not many questions, so please, audience out there in Etherland, can you please pop any questions you might have in the Q&A box down the bottom, and we'll get to them at the end.
All right. So I will just so just sort of going on the back of the session formats that Louise just talked about. My first top tip is to make sure that you pick the right format for your proposal. And the reason we bring this up is often there's a really interesting topic, but it might not warrant a 60-minute slot. And Louise was saying it's a very competitive process. So think about, are you able to convey the information that you want to share, the research that you want to present, or the best practice that you want to share with everyone? Are you able to do that in a short amount of time, like a 14-minute Inspire format? Do you really need a 60-minute session? And then the other thing is also to think about how interactive is this session? Are you presenting, or are you downloading information? Or are you more interested in a brainstorm activity or a session where there's knowledge sharing between the audience, which is more suited to a cafe session? So really think about what it is that you want to share and then pick the right format for it. If you're not sure, send us an email and we can guide you on that. And also the proposal will actually let you select what your first preference is, and then also will allow you to then select if you would consider a different format if we can't give you your first preference. So that will be in the submission form. It's like a tick box. The other top tip is ensuring that your title is short, and that's mostly to do for character limitations, unfortunately, with our mostly with the apps. And just keep it to 90 characters if you can. All of those details are on the submission form, so you'll be able to see that. And yeah, it's important to include some keywords in the title, because you don't want to have a title like International Education, Visionary and Transformative. That's too broad, too abstract, and doesn't really tell us what your session is about. So the title is really the cover, and that's what people are going to look at when they decide to go to your session or not. So it really needs to grab a little bit of attention. And that's in terms of do's, and in terms of don'ts, be original, but don't overdo it with your quirkiness. We still need to understand from the title what the subject matter of your proposal is, or your presentation or panel. The third tip, so do set the scene. So there's three main fields that you're gonna need to fill out in the proposal, which then is what gets presented to delegates in the program. So one is your title, then there's your abstract, and then there's your learning objectives. So the purpose of the abstract is to set the scene and to offer some context. So for example, what's the challenge that you're trying to solve? Or what is the method that you're trying to present? How, I don't know, if you're doing a survey, you're talking about a survey that you recently conducted. So how did you go about it? And how many people did the survey, for example? What was your response rate? And then think of the abstract more as your, like if you're going through Netflix and you want to see the description, that would be your abstract. It's sort of like a teaser of what your session is about. The fourth tip would be regarding that third field that I was talking about, which is the learning objectives. And here is to clearly articulate what are the learning outcomes of your session. So whether it's a presentation, a panel, or a cafe session, what is it that the audience is going to get out of that session? Is it, I don't know, are they going to come away with a toolkit? Are they going to learn about specific trends? So just tell us clearly what is the learning for the audience if your session gets accepted and put into the program. And don't overdo it. You don't need to have 3, 4, 5 different, as long as it's clear and there's at least one objective, one clear learning outcome, that's enough. I think Louise already spoke about this one, but we were talking about before about ensuring that your speakers are known and that they are linked to your proposal. So often what happens is the proposal needs to get submitted into 2 steps. So the first step is to fill out the fields regarding the content of your presentation. And then the second step is actually to link the speakers that will be nominated against your proposal. So it's not enough to just say, oh, we've got 5 speakers, or these are the names of the speakers. You actually need to put their names into the database, so create a user ID for them, and then link them to that proposal. And what that allows us to do is the reviewers will have, this is not a blind review process, the reviewers will actually be able to then see their bio, their background, and really gauge the level of expertise that they will be bringing to that proposal. So it's actually really important to put that in. If there's a situation where you can't get that information, or there's perhaps one speaker on a panel that is still to be confirmed, please let us know and put that in the comments. But just know that that will weigh into the decision to accept or not. So you have a lot more chances to get through if all of the information is available at the time of the deadline, which is the 10th of March. And I'm happy to take questions on that as well. Sure, I think every year we have some questions around that. The 6th tip is to ensure that the title, abstract, and learning objectives accurately reflect what you will present in the session. The reason we bring this up every year is that often, you know, the way it's presented in the abstract is a little bit abstract, part of the fun there, but and then the learning objectives might say, okay, well, this is what the audience is going to get out. But then when we actually get to the program or to the session, it actually is quite different. So we need to ensure that what you're telling us in March that you're going to present and that's going to be available to delegates is actually going to be what actually happens on the ground in October, which is, I know, a long way away. Things can change. Obviously, we can work with you if it gets accepted and things change and maybe the angle of your presentation will change. We can adjust and we can amend, but make sure that at this stage that you are clear on what it is that you want to do in October. And the second, I don't know how many tips there are. I think there's 9, but let's see. Number 7 is do not force your theme into your proposal. I think the expression is don't force a square peg into a round hole. It's great if your proposal aligns with the theme. It makes for a much cohesive program, but don't force it. So just because it's not about innovation and transformative and it doesn't speak exactly to that doesn't mean that it's not going to get through. So it's not a mandatory criteria. So just ensure that it is innovative in what you are presenting. This one is obvious, but I do know that a lot of the times you leave things to the last minute and you put it in and then you don't check the spelling. So please do check the grammar and check the spelling, make sure that everything's accurate. My best tip is to download the word preparation form. So if you go to the website, there's a Word document which allows you to prepare your presentation offline, and you can share that with colleagues or with your other co-speakers. And you can also run it through a spell check. And then once you're happy with that, you can then copy paste that into the actual proposal form. So just remember that there's no spell check in the XCD form itself. So make sure that you do that offline or not offline, but into a Word document or whatever other document before you paste it into the XCD form. So please do check. I know it's an obvious one, but it does make it a lot better when we read something that's well written and cohesive and well written. This sort of this is also another tip that's related to spelling and grammar, but the reason I bring it up is because this applies a lot to when you're collaborating with other colleagues or even other organizations, to make sure that you start your proposal early, because there is quite a bit of information that you need to collate and put into the proposal. So reach out to those speakers in advance, for example, to ensure that they are aware that you're nominating them as speakers. Make sure that you have their consent to add them as speakers. Remind them to go into XCD and update their bio, because you won't be able to see their profile. You'll be able to see their name and select their name, but all of the other details, they have to do it themselves. So make sure that they go in and do that themselves. Also give them a draft of the abstract, of the title, of the learning objectives. Make sure that you have that conversation with them in advance, so that you don't do it at the last minute, the day before the deadline. So you can log a submission in, and then you can go and edit it as many times as you need until the 10th of March. We will not be sharing any information with any reviewers or any committee members at all until the call for proposals formally closes on the 10th of March. So you're more than welcome to go in and put in a draft submission, submit it, and then go in 2 or 3 days later and edit it again and update it. So we won't even get notification that you're actually doing that. But on the 10th of March, that will be the closing date. You will no longer be able to submit any information after that, or submit any new entries. And finally, this is just an idea that we suggest, especially if you've never been to AIEC before, or you've never actually submitted a proposal before and you're thinking about it now, is have a look at last year's program. And there's a website URL there that you can have a look. There's several programs from previous conferences online, but this one for 2022, you can get an idea of the types of sessions that we had in the program, what kind of topics were relevant, and just also you can see how we write the abstracts, how the learning objectives are formulated, and just give you a general sense of the topics that might be of interest to our audience. So I highly encourage that you go and check that out. So just to review, our top 10 tips is to pick the right session type, to ensure your title can stand alone and includes those keywords, to write a strong and succinct abstract, to clearly articulate the learning outcomes of your proposal, to ensure that your title, your abstract, learning objectives clearly reflect the outline that you've given us, to add the speakers into XCD and make sure that they're linked to your proposal, not to force the theme, and to take the time to review and check your grammar and your spelling, to prepare in advance, and finally to refer to past programs for inspiration. Again, we've said it all along, for more information, please go to the website, or I think we're at the end of the presentation, Louise, and ready to take some questions. So I will hand over to you and let me know.
Okay, there's quite a few questions. Thanks, Jo. Quite a few questions coming through. I'm going to give you a break to have a sip of water and answer some of the content ones, and then there are some logistical ones that I'll throw to you. But combining two, one from Gretchen and from Bosco Anthony, in terms of keynotes. So Gretchen, yes, we have for the past 2 years had just a format of just plenaries on the Friday, and we will be doing that again in 2023. Bosco, in terms of selection for keynotes, that's something that happens at the steering committee, program committee level. So just keep an eye out on the AIEC website as we begin to announce keynote speakers. Bosco Anthony is also asking, will the conference be available to cater for videos from the speakers? I'm not sure that that's actually something we've made a decision about yet. The concept is, as Jo mentioned at the beginning, that all speakers will be there in person. Now, we realise sometimes something might happen, I don't know, a session's been accepted and the week before someone ends up with, I don't know, shingles, chickenpox, hopefully not COVID, and things happen. So there is no decision on that. I can't really answer that one yet. Kaylee, thank you for your question. You're asking about, you've got a proposal that could potentially be 40-minute or a 60 minutes or a session, and do you put in two separate proposals? No. Put in one proposal, put in your first preference in terms of the session format that you'd like. So you might want a panel or a 60-minute presentation, but there will be an option to say, if I can't get this, I'm happy to be considered for a 14-minute session. That's right, isn't it, Jo? We are doing that.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to that. So we understand that the outline for a 60-minute panel is very different for the outline for a 14-minute, right? So if the case is that we can't give you your 60-minute, or the other way around, right? You might want to give a 14-minute, but we might think that could be expanded. What we would do is we would come back to you, and then we would then decide if you need to either tweak the proposal that you've submitted, or most likely we will work with you and ask you to resubmit a completely new sort of fresh concept. But we will give you guidance once that decision has been made.
But putting something in more than once doesn't optimize your chances. It's much easier for the program committee to assess what you've put in, and based on that quality. And as Jo said, we make a decision then whether it's 60, 14, quite what it might be. Now, look, there's a question, and a legitimate question from one of our anonymous attendees about me saying that the conference is about international education and not things like schooling, but then quite correctly said that schools is one of the sectors identified. Yes, as long as the topic relates to international education. So it might be about recovery of the school sector post-COVID in terms of international student mobility, bringing students in. It might be about welfare of under 18 international students coming into Australia or going elsewhere for studies. So the context can be schools, but it must also be international education. Jo, there was also a question about from Sherwin, do we get a space to exhibit? Do you want to answer?
Well, we treat program and exhibition completely separate. So if you are interested in an exhibition spot or in a sponsorship spot, my suggestion would first to email us your expression of interest at aiec@idp.com. We will be launching the prospectus, I believe, in mid-March. So we will be sending out a notification once that's available. But if you are interested now, just send us a quick email so that we have your details and we can get back to you with what we know at the moment. But sorry, just to answer the question, Louise, a spot in the program doesn't lead to an expo spot, and the other way around, just because you're an exhibitor or a sponsor does not guarantee a spot in the program.
Yeah, important to understand that. Leante's asking, is there a reference list of previously presented themes, topics? Yes, on the website. We keep realizing that. The website, go to the website and have a look at past conference papers, Leante, and you'll see what's been in the program previously. Okay, Joe, I'm going to ask you to answer this because I can never remember the character count. Another anonymous question, specific format proposals need to be submitted in and word count apart from the characters for the title. I can never remember the character count.
So I'll just give it a bit. So 90 characters was the requirement for the Cvent app, which is what we've been using for the last 2 years. We are actually considering a different app possibly this year. And I would hope that they don't limit us even less than that. So 90 characters is what we're asking, simply because that's what the Cvent app is set for. Hopefully it will be more characters than that. And if you need to use abbreviations, that's okay, as long as not every other word is an abbreviation. So things like international education, you can obviously abbreviate to InterLed, or HE, you could, use HE for higher ed. So that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Look, and there's some questions around, can proposals be research that have been published in peer-reviewed journals already? Yes, no reason why not. They'll still be subject to the same selection criteria that we've spoken about today. Someone else has asked, my proposal is sort of original research, but the case study is not finished yet. As long as there are some, you're sort of well into it and there are some key findings and some evidence that are coming from it that can be backed up. Yeah, of course. That's not a problem.
Louise, can I just mention something on that one? Because it comes up every year. So if it's research or a case study or something like that, there still needs to be an outcome before the conference. So maybe not at the time. So I understand that by the 10th of March, you might be doing a piece of research that you don't have the findings for. That's absolutely fine. But as long as you're ready to present those findings in October at the conference, then that needs to happen. And we would encourage you to use the other information section of the proposal to let us know around those timings, just so that we are aware.
Look, there's an interesting comment from Daniel, who apparently presented a 15-minute presentation in 22. And Daniel's saying, but we never received any audience feedback, which would help them sort of maybe improve what they do next time around. I'm not sure that we actually do provide, we request audience feedback, Daniel, for each session. We don't always get it. Josephine, if you want to.
Yeah, we get really, really very poor feedback, to be honest, and it's a struggle. My best suggestion, Daniel, is to talk to the program committee for the track in which you presented. So I don't know whether it was marketing or, so there is a representative on the program committee for each of those tracks, and they will be attending all of the sessions in their tracks at the conference program. So I would start there. If you don't know who they are, just send the email to AIEC@idp.com and we'll be able to forward it on to that person. But then at the conference itself, we can also have a look. So if you send me an email, I'll forward it on to whoever is relevant in that section.
Good advice.
But actually, and the other thing is just to remind people on the day, just to provide feedback through the app or through the post-conference survey, because we get very little engagement, unfortunately.
I'm also getting a question about, can we present a pilot study not holding ethics approval? This is not an academic conference. This is a professional conference. If you've got ethics approval for a particular piece of research, yes, please let us know in your proposal, but it's not something that we request or we require. The other one, someone's asking, what's the deadline for submissions for proposals? Is it the 10th?
Yes, it is. And I just realized now that we didn't put that in the deck, but it's definitely the 10th of March. The website has a section called key dates. So if you go to the website, to the call for proposals segment, landing page, there's a number of different pieces of information there. So go to key dates. And the deadline is the 10th of March. And then it also tells you a few other key deadlines, like when registration opens, when we send out notifications. So notifications of when you find out if you've been accepted or not would be probably end of May. We'll try a little bit earlier, but I don't think, definitely mid-May to end of May would be the notification.
And look, one more question, and I'm sorry, it's probably I've misunderstood the word count question. I think that person was asking about word count for the actual presentation. That's up to you. For a 14-minute Inspire session, how many words can you say? How fast can you speak? How slowly do you speak? What are the key messages you want to get across? So you're not writing out the entire paper as such. So it's really the time limit that limits you. And as I said, how fast or slow you speak.
Yeah, and I would recommend for the 14-minute presentations, I think we did this last year, a good rule of thumb is 1 slide per minute. So,
I agree.
One for your intro, one for your outro, which is sort of like, where can you find out more information? And then everything in between would be 1 slide per minute. And that's also good to remember when you're actually putting the proposal together. When you submit the information online into the XCD system, you will also be asked to put in an outline of how you intend to use your time. So especially for panels, for example, tell us, like, you've got 3 speakers, how many speakers? But for a 14-minute presentation, you could say, well, I'll use a third of that time for setting the scene, another third to explain 1, 2, and 3, and then the third section will be just to cover and review. So remember, though, 14-minute presentations do not have Q&A.
And just look, this is sort of really, if you get through to being accepted in the program, keep the text on your slide to a minimum. Like, honestly, I mean, you saw we try to be punchy with our presentation today, and hopefully we were. But text-heavy slides, you're going to lose your audience. So particularly in those 14-minute sessions, it's really important that it's that key information that you're putting across, and use visuals where you can, use infographics, use images. Just a little tip there. Now, look, we don't have any other questions.
Sorry, Louise, just to clarify, Bosco's question was about playing videos while presenting. So he understands that it's in person. So he just wants to know if he's allowed to present videos during his presentation.
Yeah, I did see that. I deliberately hadn't answered it. Sorry, but I will now. Yeah, of course. If you embed videos into your presentations, that's fine. Nothing come through the chat, Shamala, that we should be addressing?
I've put all the questions in the Q&A I've asked, so that's all good.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you so much, everybody. We look forward to receiving your proposals. It's always very exciting when the call for proposals closes and we get to read all of the interesting wealth of information and ideas and inspirational pieces that come through. So thank you, and we hope you found today helpful.
Yeah, and Louise, thank you so much for that. And just a reminder, if you would like to brainstorm, or you have still questions, or they come up later on, please do send an email to AIEC@idp.com, and you'll be able to, either Sham or myself or Louise will be able to answer that. And if not, we will also forward that on to the program committee. So please do, don't be shy. If something comes up, let us know. And just remember, the 10th of March is the deadline to submit your proposals. So wish you all the best of luck. And thank you very much. The recording.
And we see you in Adelaide, hopefully.
See you in Adelaide, yes.